It's going to be a grab bag episode, everybody. Welcome to the Obvious Choice podcast again. It's going to be a grab bag episode. There's a couple topics that I want to hit on. None of them are big enough to make a full-on episode, but I think all of them are interesting topics, and they're interesting because I don't actually know where at least two of them are going to go. And so one of them is kind of a new take on trust on the internet, and this comes from a lot of reading that I'm doing of Stephen King. So I've been rereading Stephen King's book On Writing, A Memoir of the Craft, which is one of the best books to learn about writing, but also just a phenomenal memoir of somebody who has achieved great things and speaks very honestly about the good, the bad, and the ugly of it. And then that transitions into a lot of lessons learned of how to be great at what you do. For anything, really. It's really, I mean, writing is just about putting in the work like anything else. And if you write, you read. If you like it, so it's great at that. But anyway, I'm going to pull out a couple quotes in there and talk to you a little bit about trust specifically, because it is a take that I've been thinking a lot about. Probably one that's going to get me into trouble on this episode. And the second thing that I'm going to bring to the table today is I'm going to talk about how the fitness industry has zero product market fit. And I think that's at the core of a lot of the problems. The best products to sell get fast solutions, are easy to do, and they're painless. Fitness takes a long time, is hard, and it hurts. And so I'm going to talk about that problem. And I'm going to talk about some interesting ramifications to that problem, because I think that, you know, you hear about New York, if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere. I think that if you can make it in the fitness industry, you can make it anywhere. And we see that a lot. A lot of the really well-known business celebrity types come from the fitness industry. A surprising amount. And I think one of the reasons is you have to be so good for that reason. The third topic is one that Amber's bringing to the table. So she's going to share a story of a failed training launch, although I don't think it was quite like a failed launch, but
it's perspective. Depends on how you define fail. Yeah.
So we're going to talk about that, and then Ren didn't answer the message.
No, I have nothing interesting to say today at all.
So that's where we're at. Which one do you want to start with, everybody?
Let's go with trust.
Okay. So this one's the most...
I want to hear how you're getting in trouble. That's what I want to hear.
Well, I'm going to get in trouble because I think a lot of people in our industry completely, absolutely bullshit themselves. And in bullshitting themselves, they're being dishonest with their audience. They're so concerned with showing off to other people who they think is like them by not offending anybody that they aren't actually saying what's true. And when you don't say what's true, you don't build any trust with anybody. When you say what's true, it sometimes rubs people the wrong way because the truth isn't necessarily pretty. As an example.
Was the cough the example?
Oh God! Well, you guys know this. I've been so sick. This is the first day this week. We're recording this on Thursday that I've been out of bed. On Monday to Wednesday this week, I was in bed all day, every day, and I ate a total of 2 bowls of Cheerios and 1 orange. So, I'll see what I can do for you, everybody. But the example, before I get to the Stephen King, the example that I always think about is, you know, using the word fat. Every time that anybody uses the word fat now, people rise up in the fitness industry and say that's a fat phobic comment. Mm-hmm. And I don't pretend that I even understand the argument, if I'm honest. But where I come from is that's what literally everybody in the fitness who is not in the fitness industry says. Like, everybody who doesn't spend all day, every day reading the same 10 social media accounts uses the word fat. And so it's this weird insulated kind of circle jerk where we're so concerned to not offend people that we actually are dishonest with our approach. And so that's where I'm going to get myself into trouble. So this is some of the stuff that Stephen King was talking about, because Stephen King's the horror writer, so he writes horror, gruesome novels, and he uses pretty crude language a lot of the time, and he has gotten a lot of flack for it over the years. Like, people call him out, people write him letters. There's been lots written about how horrible he is and satanic worshiper and all this kind of stuff. And he is like, I grew up in a blue-collar town. This is how blue-collar people talk. It would be dishonest for me to write a book where I don't use the words that blue-collar people use. And so here's a couple quotes that I pulled out from the book. He said, if you expect, and this is like, he talks about a writer, but really this is for anything. So think about this more as a metaphor, not necessarily if you're like wanting to write books, particularly fiction books. Like, his book is about how to write fiction, but actually how to write fiction is just how to be a good storyteller, which is how to be a good communicator, which is basically how to do anything well. So it's a pretty important book to read. He says, if you expect to succeed as a writer, rudeness should be the second to least of your concerns. The least of all should be polite society and what it expects. If you intend to write as truthfully as you can, your days as a member of polite society are numbered. Anyway, let me get some reactions to that line first before I go on to the next one.
I'll dive in, because in the context of the Online Trainer Academy, which is a wonderful program, by the way, I get to coach our awesome students. And the number of students who have a hang up about posting anything under the idea that they may offend someone who will never buy shit from them ever is hilarious to me. And I will literally say to our students, you cannot develop a marketing strategy based around not offending the people who will never buy shit from you.
Do you have a specific example? I'd love to hear it.
Oh, absolutely. Well, that really pretty much that is a specific example. But let's see, coach of 20 years, right?
What's a fake name?
Not we'll say Stephen, because we're talking about Stephen King. Well, I feel like I shouldn't say that. Let's say Christine, because I like that story. That's a Stephen King story. We'll say Christine, right? Because that car was fucking spooky. Any case, so I mean, it was, man. So let's say Christine, trainer of 20 years in person, right? Mm-hmm. Built up a great reputation, goes online and says, I'm having trouble posting online because I don't want to be bothersome to my friends and family who follow me online, who may not want to see me talking about fitness all the time. My first reply, you don't have to talk about fitness all the time. My second reply is, why are you so overly concerned with people who have no intention of supporting your business? It's not a great lighthouse, right? It's almost like being a lighthouse and there are ships wrecking on the shore. You say, I don't want to be too bright for the neighbors, right?
If you're using social media to keep in touch with your friends, they're probably not very good friends.
Right. Yeah. And my reply was like, if they don't like it, they'll probably just not look at it or maybe block you or unfriend. But you can talk to these people in person. Again, just the need, taking procrastination and inserting the excuse of not being impolite. Right. Is pretty much what's happening there.
Okay. Amber, anything to add before I go on?
So I like to use it as a filter. So like my old USP used to be, I help hot mess working moms lose weight without losing their shit. Right. And so like without losing their shit, literally that is what they tell me. Right. Like if you add one more thing to my plate, I swear to God, I will lose my shit. And that's what they say, but not everyone likes that kind of language. And John, I have a very dark sense of humor. If you ask me for a joke, it's not going to be a joke that most people appreciate. Right. And so like I consider that kind of stuff a filter because it helps me find the people that I can be myself with and who I'm going to be able to help more effectively. Right. If I end up with a client that doesn't like cursing and like really dark jokes, then like, no, you know? And so like reframing the feeling of, you know, offending people, like I definitely don't worry about it, but like use it proactively as a filter. The more authentic you are, the more likely you are to get people that you actually enjoy working with and that you don't have to like make yourself smaller for.
And you find your space too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like when you said to me the other day, you know how we Jew?
Yes.
And then
Okay, for the record, I did not say this. I am quoting. I quoted something you said.
I never said you know how we Jew.
You sent a message that said that.
Did I? Okay,
Yes, you
well,
did. You sent a screenshot of someone else saying that. Just for
that's
clarity,
Amber's
I
about to
did
get
not
canceled.
say that.
Cancel
Yep.
Amber. Start the
You
hashtag.
can cancel me for a lot of
Everybody
things,
cancel
but that
Amber.
is not it.
But then you followed up. You're like, today's conversation reminds me that between the lack of PC in my military upbringing and working here, I wouldn't survive working anywhere else.
Nope.
And it's like, but that's a good point, right? Like,
Oh man,
you probably would not work in a corporate environment.
Nope. I have to be
find your
fired.
people. But you find your people,
Mhm.
and it works for you, and that's fine. And what works for you
Oh.
wouldn't work for somebody else. But to try to be polite and nice and not step on anybody's toes, I don't even think from a business standpoint is even the conversation to be had. I think it is actually dishonest, and I think it is disrespectful to people to try to step around toes like that. The second one, he says, this is Stephen King. He says, bad writing is more than a matter of shit syntax and faulty observation. Bad writing usually arises from a stubborn refusal to tell stories about what people actually do, to face the fact. Let us say, the murderers sometimes help old ladies cross the street. There's a lot going on there. To me, what this means is really twofold. The first is that bad writing never tells the whole story. Bad writing dishonestly only tells one side of it because they're trying to pull something over you. The second part of it, though, is that nothing is ever bad completely and nothing is ever good completely. Even the worst people in the world, even if they're mentally ill, still in their own mind, even if their chemistry is off, are still acting correctly. Like they still have their reasons for doing it in their own mind, in their own world. And it's really important to do that. If you think about any TV show, any movie, anything like that you look at, the best ones are the ones where you connect with the bad guy. Mm-hmm. You almost feel weird because you're almost in an odd way like rooting for the bad guy. You start to appreciate with him or her and say, hey, you know, I kind of get where they're coming from. You know, they're still bad, like they're still doing bad things, but I kind of feel bad for them. Mm-hmm. And I think we should all take this approach a little bit more on the internet, perhaps. And say, hey, you know, I kind of get where this person's coming from, even though I don't agree with this one isolated thing that they do. Mm-hmm. Maybe they're not a terrible, awful human being in every way, shape, or form. So I like that line. So those are just two things I've been thinking about a lot. Let's talk. I want to end, Amber, with the product market fit. I mean, you don't understand where I'm even going with that, so it's fine. But I want to end with the product market fit just because I think it's a good one to end on, and I also think it's a little bit shorter than the product launch. So, can you tell me what the story was?
Yeah. Let me think of a name.
Bob.
We need a random name generator on this show.
I know. I'll go with Henry.
Sean.
We'll go with Henry.
John Henry?
Why is it so hard to think about a name?
It's because it's putting you on the spot, you know, like that. And then you associate names with different people. Like when you say Bob, I used to have a knife holder that looked like a person and his name was Bob. So when you say Bob, that's what I associate. I know it's weird. Dark sense of humor, remember? So weird. Yeah. Anyway, so Henry. So Henry came to me and has been struggling to get online clients. And he had this idea. He wanted to do a 14-day like jumpstart kind of program and transition people from that to his 90-day program. We strategized and came up with a plan for getting people into the 14 days. He got like 18 people into this.
So what was the 14-day jumpstart? Like, what is that?
So it was to just lose weight in the first 14 days.
What is he doing in it?
Nutrition and workout stuff and testing out his software.
So he's just coaching.
Mm-hmm.
He's just basically like 2 weeks. It's not a 14-day jump. It's just like 2 weeks free coaching, basically.
Well, it was paid. So he charged $40 for the 2 weeks.
Okay.
So he got a little bit of money into it, a little bit of skin in the game for them. So upping the odds that they potentially buy again.
Yep.
And so he's super excited, had like 18 people, pop in. I take one of them was free because it was a family member, but everybody else was paid for. And then it came time to transition. And so, what normally happens, right? Like 10% of the people that join participate extremely well. And then like 10% don't participate at all. And then the 80% are somewhere else on that spectrum. And then trying to transition those people over into a 90-day program. And as he's doing that, he's hearing crickets.
Okay.
And so he's feeling super, disappointed and frustrated. And so we've been, kind of talking about, how do we move forward, from this?
Yeah. So I want to know a lot more about the positioning of this 14-day jumpstart. Because how you position that to me and the cost of that is everything. Mm-hmm. So how did he position that?
So with that, it was basically he was looking for, men over 40 who were wanting to lose like, 5 pounds of, fat in 14 days. And then the interesting thing that happens to a lot of coaches is that, hey, someone that doesn't fit who I called out for has shown interest. And so added that in. And so then he did a second call out because he had women that were responding and wanting to participate. And so he added that into it. And so he did that. He did something interesting though. He did a little bit on social media, but these are all people that he knew and he texted. So he had like a list of people and he reached out through text instead.
Which is going to be way more effective than anything else on social media.
Yep. So that was really interesting. So that was a cool approach.
So he texted them and said what?
Oh God, I'd have to go back and look, but
hey, I'm thinking about doing this thing.
Well, it was just, basically, hey, I'm looking at doing this thing and, I'm going to be using new software. The process is not new, but how I'm delivering it is new. So I know it works, but I need feedback on, this process.
So he was able to use the software as the newness hook.
Mm-hmm. But also,
which is a very good hook.
Yeah, well, because he was worried, like if I say the process is new, they may not trust it. And so he wanted them to feel confident in the process. But
no, I like that.
Yeah. So that went well, because obviously he got a lot of people to participate.
And so they paid him the $40.
Mm-hmm.
Did they participate?
It was that scale, right? He had 1 to 2 people that like followed it 100%. He had a few people that didn't do anything, and then everybody else just kind of was somewhere else in that spectrum.
So I wonder whether some of these people were just like doing him a favor, kind of.
Yeah. And so we figured out kind of who those people were. And so we went through and analyzed, everything, who they were, what their goals were, what the messages were, what kind of language did we use? Did we use the same, quote unquote script with everyone, or did we personalize it? Did we focus on emotion versus logic? We went through and just tore it all apart to see, where it could have gone better or what really worked, so he could reuse what worked next time.
And what was his coaching throughout the 14 days? What did he do?
Rephrase, sorry.
What did he do? What was his coaching during the 14 days? Like, how was he communicating with them?
Oh, gotcha.
How was he delivering them?
Gotcha. So he was using a different software other than QuickCoach, which is one of the things that we identified was a problem, because the experience of that software was very confusing. And so that created one of our theories is that it created a lot of resistance to people actually participating because the interface did not make sense for them.
Okay.
But he was delivering nutrition and talking about like fasting and whatever, and then workouts. And then he was also like texting people every day in emails with like lessons or whatever. And one of the things that he was really frustrated with was like not getting people to engage. So he would message and then nobody would respond.
Right. Right. I mean, I wonder, like those challenges need to be dialed in order to work. I mean, really dialed in. And you know that I love the guinea pig trial the most, where you have to charge more than $40. But if you charge closer to 100, what you can say is, hey, once you complete this, or as long as you complete as much as 75% of it, I'll give you the $100 back. Knowing full well that once they complete 75% of it, odds are they're going to get pretty good success. They're going to be happy. And if you understand loss aversion, you know that once the money's gone, it's worth much less to them than when they own it. Because we hate losing things, but once we've already... So if you can get somebody to spend money in the first place in an easier way, it's a much smoother discussion to be able to say to them, hey, look, I know I said that that at the end of it, look, you've done great. I know I said that at the end of this challenge, as long as you complete 75%, give you the $100 back. Do this in a heartbeat. But look, you're doing awesome. I want to keep going. Hey, how about we just push that forward into the next couple of months? You know, I'll double it. I'll take $200 off of the next session for you.
Yep.
And that works really well, but you need to know what that plan is beforehand, and you can't be haphazardly like, oh, I'm going to do workouts, nutrition, and then I'm going to text you every day, and then I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do that. And it seems like it's very like jumbled and all over the place. I mean, how many times have we said on this podcast just the importance of rigidity in your process and how much confidence that gives? And when you don't have that, like, it doesn't seem like that was there.
Yeah, well, and I think it was also a bit of imperfect action, right? So he didn't overthink things. So like, let's do something. Here's the plan, a loose plan, because otherwise you can get lost in the details and never actually do anything.
For sure.
And so that was kind of the plan going into it. Here's a good enough thing. Let's test it, see what your instincts are, and then we can analyze any wreckage that there may be afterwards, and we try again.
So what's your feedback? So what?
Yeah, so we're still going through it. He's still doing the kind of follow-up part of transitioning everyone, but I got a panicked email, yesterday or the day before yesterday. Like, he was just super frustrated. And so part of it was, you're not done yet, right? Like, you're not done following up with people. No, or silence right now doesn't mean no. And a no right now doesn't mean no forever, right? And then for him, one of the big things that we needed to work on was focusing on specifics when talking with people and emotion versus logic. He very much wants to convince and sell with logic instead of looking at their story.
So what's he saying?
Yeah, well, we think, super easy, and it's, in your pocket and getting access, to help, whenever, and super effective, and efficient workouts, that kind of stuff. That sounds good to us, but doesn't mean anything to them.
When you sign up with me, you get an app in your pocket. It's super effective. Yeah. These workouts are amazing. They're made by a professional.
All that stuff. And so there was a little bit of resistance when we were talking around, like, when you reach out to them, instead of like mass texting everyone, because you always can feel when it's a mass text versus an individual text, even if you change the name, it's more work. But if you want to sell big ticket items, like, you have to put in the effort there. And so one of my suggestions was, okay, when you're going to follow up with them, look at their whatever data you have, right? And we actually separated our follow-ups based on people who didn't participate at all,
Okay.
who participated some, and those who killed it, and gave direction on how to talk to each type of person. So like the person that didn't participate, they didn't fail. They still joined, which is a huge step that nobody else may have taken, right? So you celebrate that and then reintroduce a conversation to see what next steps are. And then we did a similar kind of thought process with people that kind of sort of participated. You know, you did really great here. You said that you lost a notch in your belt, which is huge, right? And then like, what's next? And you talk about, that stuff, and you find out what their goals are. And if they're saying any type of objection, like, oh, like one of the big objections he got was, oh, I don't know if right now is the right time.
Right.
And we all know as coaches, there is no right time. Life is always going to throw a wrench.
Why was it the right time 14 days ago?
Exactly. So that question. And so teaching him how to navigate that conversation and just like, okay, either, you can take the more kind of blunt approach. Well, why was 14 days ago okay?
Yeah.
Or having
take the more blunt approach.
Yeah. And right. And for me, I'm always kind of the softer approach. Like, okay, what does the right time look like? Right. Like,
right.
Actually getting them to think about it. Well, it just depends on the person, right? Like someone who's like from New York is probably going to way more appreciate, the blunt approach versus like people like me, they don't trust because it sounds fake for some people.
Yeah.
Right. And so it just depends. Know your audience, like always. So having a more personalized approach and coming with the information for them, like he asked for them to say what they accomplished. And as a coach, that's not their job. That is your job. Right. To come with them and see like, hey, like you did this, this, and this. And you can ask for additional things like, here are the things that I'm seeing. What did you notice? So just those kind of like personal details in the follow-ups. And so, you're not done yet. You still have a lot of following up to do. And worst case scenario is not that bad. Worst case scenario is nobody transitions.
Yeah.
And now we have to look and see what happened. And for me, this is the fun part. Is tearing it all apart and seeing what went well and what didn't go well and restructuring the next attempt and to test it out.
I mean, still made $680 in 2 weeks that he wouldn't have otherwise made.
Right.
And I think the biggest take home from that whole lesson is he got 17 clients because he texted people.
Mm-hmm.
Because he sent a personal message to people. And then what you said is when he tried to re-sign them, he started sending out mass texts.
Mm-hmm.
So it was the exact opposite.
Well, he did something similar beforehand. He had a bit of a script that he worked with.
He did, okay.
Yeah, but it still had more conversation after, right? Like there was naturally more conversation.
He was
right.
like one off the people.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and when he did the follow-ups, he was doing one at a time, not to literally, in a group text or anything. But I think our tone changes when we feel desperate.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And our language changes, even if we don't mean to. It just naturally kind of does. And I think you can kind of feel that, especially when you get frustrated. So I think a little bit of that might be happening as well.
That's interesting. It's interesting. I'm reminded of a story that I don't think I've told on this iteration of the podcast, but I've probably told on a previous one, but it was the Mexican jewelry story with Allison. I
remember that idea on our list. We don't think we ever did it though.
Did we never do it? Okay. So there's this organization for battered women. Unfortunately, in Mexico, where we are, it's a huge problem where men beat women, have kids with multiple women, marry them, beat them, leave them. And it's a big problem. And then these women don't have jobs. They're basically screwed. And so there's this volunteer organization that Allison and her mom have become a part of that is a shelter, but also starts to employ them and gives them work and gives them a place to stay. And also Allison and her mom raised $10,000 to buy a van to get these women out, physically out of that situation. Actually just they needed to be physically taken out of it. And so part of that effort was Allison just like is super crafty, and so was making this jewelry that was inspired by all this Mexican stuff. And it's beautiful. And so she was making these earrings, and she put out this call on her social media. And her social media is like not tiny. I mean, it's a few thousand people. It's like relatively engaged. And she's been posting on it consistently. It's not like a ghost town.
Oh.
And so she put photos, like beautiful photos of this jewelry, and told the story. And she told the story really well of why it matters, way better than what I just said. And hey, pay what you can. Like anything helps. You get to choose whatever the jewelry is. Right? Nobody responded. She put it out on her Facebook. She put it out on her Instagram. Nobody responded. Not one. She's like, maybe it was the picture. Right? So she took better pictures. And then she put it up again. Nobody responded. I was like, why don't you just message some people? So she messaged 10 people individually. You know, friends, ex-colleagues, that type of thing. Mm-hmm. 8 out of 10 of them responded. Bought a piece of jewelry. One of them bought for $500. All of the other ones bought for $20 to $50. Mm-hmm. And a few of them even said, you know, I thought that I saw something about this on social media. It's just, everybody is so busy in their own world. What you think is the most important thing to you in your universe is so completely and utterly irrelevant in somebody else's, unless you show that you're a human and like reach out personally to them. Mm-hmm. Even just, there was a guy, this is actually funny. So a friend of mine just sold his company. I don't know how big, this is probably a decent sale, but a friend of mine just sold his company. He's doing like kind of like a PR tour. And so he wanted to get on our podcast as like a guest on our podcast. And so he sent me an email, like I sent him a congratulations because I saw that he sold it. And he sent me an email, and the email said, it was such a, because I had already seen his message. I had already seen, he wrote like a Medium post. I had already seen his Medium post that announced that he sold it, and all the acknowledgements and all the people that he mentioned. And of course I wasn't there. I wasn't a part of the thing. But then he sends me this message. And the email reads, check out the thank yous at the bottom, winky smiley face. And then he has the link to the same article, which now has me mentioned at the bottom of it.
Nice.
Right? And then, wondering if you might be interested in having me on the podcast to share a bit of the story. Mm. And like, really smart move. Mm-hmm. He clearly just added me because he wanted to. And I would normally, like, if this was an interview show, I'd have him on in a heartbeat. Like, he's a great guy and super smart guy and great sale, and he's done amazing things in the fitness industry for years. But just, you think about the difference between reaching out to somebody and asking to be on their podcast, doing something like that, mm-hmm. versus like this is why this guy was able to build a company that he sold. Yep. Is because he understands that this is the way to have things happen for him. It's kind of the Mexican jewelry thing.
Ren, do you see, like, with the students that you work with too, like, they kind of go under the philosophy of the Field of Dreams philosophy, right? Build it and they will come.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I find it funny, and I feel like everybody is so scared to talk to people. So they just kind of throw stuff out there and like pray to the social media gods that somebody will come to them and beg for their business, or beg for their help.
Yeah. It's the human avoidance system that John and I mm-hmm. talked about on the previous podcast, right?
Yep.
What system? They basically say,
Ren, by the way.
What did you rename it?
We renamed it Human Avoidance Marketing.
Okay.
Because the acronym is HAM, and I thought that was funny.
Nice.
That's actually the best reason that you could have given for renaming it. So
that's the only acceptable one.
I did it by mistake. I did it by mistake in the book, and I was like,
"Oh, this is brilliant!
Oh, that's funny."
It's like It's like it's like Iron Man discovering a new element. Oh
Yeah.
shit, ham! I made ham.
Ham.
But yes, like they're fundamentally saying most of the time, can you give me a process that prevents me from having to interact personally with humans, but still entices them to join my process once it's built? Like, so a lot of the questions end up being, what's the best way to blankety blank? And I say often, I'm not sure. I've never blankety blanked, but more important, I've never blankety blanked as you and to your specific population that you serve. So
You've never blankety blanked which population?
the population they serve, John.
How many different populations have you blankety blanked?
At least 3. But I've never blankety
One's
blanked
obvious.
their pop right. One's clear. But I've never blankety blanked their population. So what I say is, you got to get in there and mix it up. You got to mix it up with the peeps, man. The people are where your answers are.
Yeah.
The people are always where your answers are. No
It's
coach
such a
is great
deeply-
enough.
Well, it's such a deeply personal service, isn't it?
It is.
And when you're delivering such a deeply personal service, you can't expect to get people in a inherently impersonal way.
Right.
Now, this doesn't mean that you can't try to do it in a scalable manner, but I don't think you need to. I mean, this guy, what did you call him, Henry?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Henry.
Yeah.
Okay, Henry. It's hard because I know what his actual name.
See, I told you that's why it's
Yeah.
so hard to come up with a name.
I know who Henry is as well.
So it's hard though because, well, it's not hard. Henry, sent, I don't know how many text messages he
A
sent
lot.
to get 17 clients, but how long did that take him?
That was over.
Versus if he
Like-
were to create content.
Mm-hmm.
Like he would have
Yeah.
spent the same amount of time, probably way more time.
Mm-hmm. One thing that he said that made me kind of giggle a little bit is like he loves to teach, right? And that's all he wants to do is to teach. And so when I was trying to where I was talking about earlier, where there was some resistance with getting people like taking the personal approach and like coaching them through this transition, right? Because again, we've talked about this a ton. I firmly believe sales calls are just coaching calls. And so there was resistance of having this coaching moment to transition into this. I think he's like, I just want to teach. I love to teach. But like, so I feel like a lot of coaches are kind of in that thing. They want a podium and they want to speak and they want people to clap.
Mhm.
Right.
But they don't want the dialogue that challenges them
Right.
because it's so scary. Because to have to talk through that challenge in a way that is productive and not reactive is so hard. And so I find that is a huge issue with a lot of coaches and when they're doing these challenges and transitions into a new program or any kind of sales, that's what they're wanting. They want to have a speech, they get a clap, and people buy, right? And that's just not how it works.
But I think about this. I'm going to do like a pure narcissism move and make this about me.
Mhm.
Good for you, John.
Yes, this is what we do because my face is on this podcast.
You've been
And my
sick.
name.
You deserve something, buddy. You've been sick for a couple of days. Go crazy.
Oh, I need something. I need a win.
Right.
I think. Oh my god, the writing that I tried to do today. I think I wrote for 5 hours and got about 150 words today.
Oh,
I
my.
saw your post.
Oh my god, just my brain just does not work. It's like mud. I think about this, whenever I say all I want to do is write books, it's like, well, that's not actually true. What I want to do is I want to create stuff, but when I say that, it's usually around times when I'm struggling a little bit
Mhm.
and when I'm fighting being accountable for any kind of results.
Mm-hmm.
And I have other friends of mine that are kind of similar. It's like, oh, so-and-so, like, all they really want to do is just be a thought leader and write books. And it's like, well, I don't know if that's true. Like, maybe that's true, but I think a lot of that is they're kind of frustrated
Mm-hmm.
with accountability. But the reality of it is, the more that you are accountable for, the more rewards come your way.
Mm-hmm.
The more rests on your shoulders, the more responsibility you have, the more rewards you have. I mean, that's the trade-off that we all sign up for. Like, you guys don't make as much money as me, but you don't have as many stresses. And there's pros and cons to that. I mean, there's no right or wrong. It's if you decide that you want to work for somebody else, I think that is a perfectly reasonable decision. I think perhaps a lot more people these days should probably do it. You're not going to make as much in an absolute sense, but you're probably going to make more than enough to have a damn good life. Unless you're like Ren and you get fired 5 or 6 times.
And maybe that's my dream life, John. Don't take that away from me.
There's so many jokes. So many jokes.
It's just it seems like it's fighting accountability, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It's what it is. It's exactly what it is. Amber tapped into something really important when she said, you want the people, but you don't want to have to interact with them. You just want to be clapped for, right? And then they sign up. You know everything. You're brilliant. We love you. Hey, take our money, please.
I want to be famous, and I want people to know me, but I don't want anybody to bother me ever.
Right.
You don't want the paparazzi. I don't. Yeah.
Right. Don't bother me at all.
Although at Great Wolf Lodge, with my sister and my nephew in the arcade, a woman asked to take a picture with me, and my nephew was very impressed.
Oh, really?
And my sister was very fucking fed up. Because my sister, of course, who's like partner in commercial litigation at a Bay Street law firm, like one of the biggest law firms in Toronto by the time she's 30, unbelievably accomplished, stellar at everything she's done her whole life, sees her youngest brother, this fucking yahoo, just come up and start writing this stuff on the internet,
Man that named his ball hockey stick. You want a picture with him? That's who you want a picture with?
Yeah, right.
Mr. Excalibur over here? Okay,
I do financial regulation, okay? Did you know that?
See, I don't even like people like recognize me at the grocery store, like someone that I used to work with or an old client, and I can't remember their name to begin with. Oh, hi, Amber. Don't. So your life would not work for me strictly for that reason.
It happens to me like it depends how much I'm getting out, but it probably happens to me once every 2 weeks. In Mexico, it happened probably once every 2 weeks. Somebody coming through town would stop me. So not a lot, but enough that like I can feel like a boss so often, and then like go back into my little hole. Should we get into this last topic?
Yeah.
Okay. This is something that there's no take home, like this is going to make you better. This is something that I want to share because it's something that I think about a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I teased it a little bit at the beginning, but it's this idea that the fitness industry really, when you think about it, has basically no product market fit. Like when you think about things that are hard to sell, I don't think technically there is anything more difficult to sell than fitness coaching. And this is why the supplement industry is worth, I should have looked up the stat, but the supplement industry is worth many multiples combined, more than the rest of the health and fitness industries combined. And it's because the supplement industry promises a fast, easy, and quick solution. And so it's really easy to sell. Whereas fitness coaching, we actually have to do work, is slow, painful, and hard. And yet, there are a lot of people that have been able to make a career out of it, which I think is actually quite remarkable. And I really do think that the fitness industry is like the industry's equivalent of New York City, where if you can make it in the fitness industry, I think you can make it in any industry.
Mm-hmm.
we see a lot of people not make it in the industry, right? We see a lot of people, decide that the fitness industry isn't for them, whether they could have made it or not. They've just decided that it's not the right move for them, which is fine. And a lot of them go into things like real estate, for example, and they do really well in real estate.
Mm-hmm.
Real estate is a way easier industry than the fitness industry. A lot kind of similar skills when you think about the selling.
Mm-hmm.
As much as we don't like to admit it, but we don't need to be politically correct because rudeness should be the second to least of your concerns, according to Stephen King. Looks matter.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying that they're everything, but looks matter. And looks matter in the real estate industry too, don't they?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think about this a lot as I'm like thinking about whether I think it'll happen naturally if it happens. I'm not going to go out of my way to make it happen. But if I ever end up doing stuff outside of the fitness industry, thought leadership type stuff, I mean, I'm going to write some books for outside of the fitness industry just because I think there's interesting stuff, and it's going to be predominantly the fitness industry that reads them, and maybe they'll expand out and maybe they won't, which is fine. But I'm starting to look at thought leader people, and an uncanny amount of them came from the fitness industry. Pay attention to it. It trains you, it forces you to not give up, it forces you to put in the work, it forces you to just be so good in understanding humans, in understanding change, and understanding what really drives people in a way that I can't speak with any certainty because I just don't know any other world that well. But I can't think of any other industry that would be anywhere close.
The idea that you are dependent, maybe not be the right word, but I'll say it. The idea that your business is rooted in someone choosing to change, your ability to recognize their interest in change, having a conversation that is centered around the other person and not your business specifically, having the patience to deal with their ambivalence to change after they've invested time and money,
Right.
being okay with that, not taking it personally, keeping your particular attitude in one place. You're the sun in the solar system. You can't move. Everything moves around you all the time, literally every day, both spinning and orbiting. And continuing to do that for more than 6 months of your life, it's phenomenal that anybody is ever successful in this industry. And if you are, you're an above average in some area. You either have above average patience, above average empathy, above average intellect, above average sales. One of those things is unusually high for you to maintain this industry, and it's miraculous that any of us make any money based on those difficult parameters. It's a terrible recipe, terrible recipe for business. And then they have to go through pain to reap the benefits of what you've provided. They have to do something that's probably not enjoyable for a continual amount of time.
For a long time.
A long time.
And may not have social support for either.
Right.
Yeah. And is going to interrupt the flow is going to be interrupted at some point by something that is out of their control.
Guaranteed.
I mean, again, Narcissist John, I'm going to make this about myself. I was sick the last 4 days. Like, I'm not working out this week. There's just no way. I am not looking forward to getting back and working out on Monday.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
right.
It's going to be hard.
It's going to suck, John.
It's going to suck.
I just did that, by the way. I just did that. I'm 4 days back, and day one was awful.
Yeah.
Like I felt
And
like
so-
I never exercised before. And only the track record of my history do I have to lean on to understand that's going to get easier relatively fast.
Right.
But if you don't know that, man, you're first time and you get sick and it's online and your coach isn't there to like literally hold you, that's a lot. You're doing a lot of work as a coach to get somebody to do that. That's hard.
Yep. And people get sick. People go away on vacation. And people's kids get sick or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Smoke meth.
People smoke meth.
It's hard to come back from that.
It's a hell of a drug. You ever done any drugs?
No.
No. Smoked weed in high school.
I am so...
University. I smoked a lot of weed in university, to be fair.
That'd be
like any good Jewish boy, I smoked a lot of weed in university. My university was basically watching the Chappelle Show and smoking weed.
We know how you chew it, Don.
But I've never done anything else. I've never had any interest. Yeah, I've never had any interest in doing anything else.
I'm frightened to find out what happens to my brain chemistry on any substance.
Well, so this is what I think about. There's all of these biohackers, which that's a conversation for another day. We can make fun of those fucking guys. But there's all these biohackers who are just messing with their brain chemistry, and they're doing things that are like upregulating their brain to give them higher performance and stuff like that. And all that I can think about is like, I get that feels good now and works for you now, but like,
right.
There ain't no long-term trials on this stuff, man. And I just, I don't need better performance right now.
Right.
That much that I'm willing to risk altering the chemistry of my brain that's been forming by evolution for thousands of years. I can't get past this logically that this is a good idea.
He's 75 years old. You develop a sexual proclivity for goats. It was that microdosing.
Just doesn't. Psilocybin's a hell of a goat populations just explode.
You buy a Viagra and goats. Like, I don't want to do that with my buddy at 75.
Yeah. It just seems like a bad idea to me.
Oh my
Bad
gosh.
idea, man. Anyway.
I'm tired.
Thank you for listening to the Obvious Choice podcast. If you're looking for another episode to listen to right now, I'm going to recommend episode 42. That's 8 non-obvious coaching truths. Some of them are hard to swallow, but they're worth thinking about. It's a matter of knowing what's true, I think, that episode versus what we want to be true.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know about you guys, that was one of my favorite ones. No, I also listened to it on like a really special hike up Monkey Mountain in Mexico with Allison and Calvin. So maybe that helped. But yeah, episode 42, 8 non-obvious coaching truths. And we talk about passive income and the fallacies of passive income. What are some of the other ones? I mean, it's just, I don't know. Trying to make, stuff your client doesn't actually care about, like where referrals and easy sales actually come from versus where we want them to come from. Anyway, episode 42, 8 non-obvious coaching truths. If you're looking for another episode, either way, thank you for joining us today, and talk to you soon. Bye-bye.